everyone. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about something which is super confusing, which has to do with anatomy, which is the arms in downward facing dog. So to review, let's just talk a little bit about what the anatomical terms are for movement at this shoulder joint, because that's just going to help us out a little bit. So the real ones we need to know is that when I move the arms forward, this is called flexion at the shoulder joint. That's where my arm bone attaches into my scapula. So this is flexion, and this is extension when I move the arms behind me. Also, we have something called external rotation. That's when I'm turning the arm open, and internal rotation. That's when I'm turning the arm in. And these terms can get complicated when the arms are above the head. It's like, I'm doing handstand, I'm doing downward facing dog. What's going on in the arms, everybody? Well, let's take a closer look. So let's start by looking at this in extended child's pose. So when I'm in extended child's pose and I reach my arms forward, we can see that this is similar to how the arms are in downward facing dog. So let's take a look at how we get into it. So I know that this is flexion of the arms. I'm reaching my arms up. Now let's go ahead and roll the palms open. So when I'm rolling the palms open here, I'm externally rotating my upper arm. That is, I am rolling this upper arm bone open. So now we have two of the actions that we're doing in down dog. Flexion, the arms are definitely up here, and external rotation. Now sometimes this can get confusing because you're like, external rotation, which way am I turning my arms? So here's a quick way that you can feel this in your own body. So take your arms down by your side and do this with me. Now let's internally rotate the arms. That means I'm taking the center of my bicep and I'm rolling it inwards. That's internal rotation. And now take your arms up. You're gonna go, okay, that feels really, really weird, right? So that's not quite right. So now let's try the opposite way. Let's take the bicep, turn it open. That's external rotation. And now take the arms up. And you'll be like, okay, that feels a little bit more normal. So if you're ever confused about which way is internal rotation, which way is external rotation, bring your arms back down here by your sides, do internal and external rotation, and then you're gonna figure it out from there. So first, let's take a look at this in extended child's pose. So this is a little easier to understand here before we become weight bearing in downward facing dog. So go ahead and reach your arms forward, okay? And now to help us find the action that's needed at the shoulders, let's let our hands help us out. So go ahead and turn the palms open, and this really helps to externally rotate the upper arms, right? So when I externally rotate the upper arms in downward facing dog, this actually helps the arm bone sit a little bit more securely in the shoulder, which is good for stability, and it also helps create some space for my neck. So you'll notice that if I internally rotate the arms, look how hunchy I can get. When we externally rotate the arms, it creates a little bit more space, and that's what we're looking for in this pose. But wait, there's more. All right, so we externally rotate the upper arms in downward facing dog, but then, and this is why this is tricky. So what's interesting about the forearm is that it can move independently of the upper arm. So when I turn my hands down or up, I'm just moving my lower arm. My shoulder's not doing anything. Watch the difference. This is me moving my shoulder. This is me just moving my lower arm. And when we do downward facing dog, we're actually doing both of these things, but in the opposite direction. I'm going to roll my upper arms open, and yeah, I'm using my hands to help me out just a little bit so that I can really get this external rotation of the upper arms. But now I'm going to keep my upper arm in this position and turn my hands down. And this is what makes this pose so tricky, because when I root my hands down, my upper arm wants to kind of go along for the ride. But to do the pose properly, I need to actually keep my bicep rolling up to my ear or hugging the outer arms in at the same time that I'm pressing my inner hand down. So my upper arm is going open and my forearm is rolling down. So they're kind of wringing each other out. They're moving in two different directions, which is what makes this pose so challenging. So you'll notice that when we're in downward facing dog, we often get the cue from teachers to press the inner hands down. When we do that, that tends to take the arms out of their external rotation. But when I tend to externally rotate at the shoulder, which is what we want, that tends to peel my hands up off the floor. So this is what makes this pose so fun and so challenging, is that we want to do both at the same time. So to find the way to set your arms in downward facing dog, first you take your arms forward. Let's roll the hands open just to kind of help ourselves out here. And you'll notice that my arms are externally rotating. Now I'm going to do my best to keep that action in the upper arms and just turn my hands down, right? And so I'm trying to find the balanced action between rooting my inner hands down as I wrap the outer arms in. And it's the combination of those two actions kind of working against each other that really creates stability through the arm. So a way that you could think about this when you come into down dog is, hey, I'm gonna wrap my outer arms in, root my inner hands down, and keep that as I move into the full pose. So just to give you a little recap on the anatomical actions that are happening in downward facing dog, well, your shoulder is in flexion, so your arms are above your head, and your upper arm is in external rotation. That means that I'm rolling the bicep open. But when the arm is up by my ear, you actually have to cue it a little differently. You say, wrap the outer arm in. And at the same time that I'm wrapping the outer arm in, I'm also turning the forearm down and pressing the inner hand into the floor, which is what's creating this wrapping and twisting action through the arm. Clarify, flexion, external rotation of the upper arm, and then turning the forearm down. This is technically in anatomical terms, this is called pronation of the forearms. Some cues that are really helpful for this are, press the hands down as you wrap your outer arms in, or press the inner hands down as you roll the bicep up to the sky. That's going to help create this action in the upper arm bone. And it's really pressing the hands down and doing the upper arm at the same time that creates the stability in the pose. So go play with that in your practice, and I hope you enjoy.